Napier, this isn't just Billy. This was everybody this weekend talking about tampering. What's funny is Steve and I talked about it last week. Steve was already on the ball. It looks like they watched the podcast. I feel like we're breaking news left and right here. Steve talked about coaches tampering last week. He threw the names out there: Norvell, Dion, what's the guy at Ole Miss? Lane Kiffin. What's the guy out there at USC? Lincoln Riley. So all these guys possibly being tossed around. Dave even said Billy. He's like, look, you have to be. You're going to be. All these guys basically came together this week and hanging out. Everyone's like, yeah, the tampering thing needs to stop. Basically, it's like they all got in the room. It's like, y'all been cheating too? Yeah, we've been cheating. Like, they're all in like, hey, look at us, huh? Who would have thought? The fact that everybody's in agreement that everyone's in agreement.
Spider-Man gift where they're pointing at each other.
Yeah. Hey, you. And it's like, hey, how'd you pull that shit off? It's like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. So it's like they're all cheating together.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, damn it. So I feel like, everyone's on the same page. Everyone's kind of like, they're in agreement that something needs to change. I want to say it was Hugh Freeze, Auburn head coach, said, look, he goes, I think it needs to go back. We need to get rid of the transfer portal. But then followed it up with saying, like, that's not going to happen. But I feel that it needs to go back to the way that it was, that if you sit out or if you transfer, you have to sit out for a year, right? That was kind of his notion towards it. And I think we've mentioned that a few times. Like, that's a possibility that it could go back to that. It definitely needs to have some sort of governor put on this thing because it's getting out of control. And for the fact that these guys can all sit at a table and have an agreement of like, yeah, we probably are, bend the rules a little bit. But the problem is that one person bends it, it's like, well, he's getting away with it. I got to bend it. And then you just kind of get it rolling and there's no line anymore. I mean, you're just swimming in nonsense and nobody's really cheating because everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
It's not cheating if it's the process, right? If it's the process and, it's just about who can be more creative, who can maybe throw more money at the problem or who can, maybe even just find a new and interesting way to get your name into one of these kids' head. And look, the other thing to keep in mind is all you got to do is find one kid that's willing to communicate with you. Kind of going back to just you guys were mentioning the dorms and things like that. These guys hang out. They live together. They go to class together. They go to practice together. They're in the locker room together. All you need to do is to get into one of these kids' ears. And even if every other kid on that team is a brick wall, it only takes one to get in and just kind of start passing that information around or maybe even having conversations about what he's hearing for himself. And then you got other players looking at it like, well, I'm better than that guy. I got to be able to make it, it only takes one kid to be in the mix of all of this that will just spread like wildfire throughout an entire team. And it's not anything that a coach can do because you can't watch them all the time. You can't control where they are when they're not in football activities. I mean, the best you could do is make sure that they go to class and that they're getting their academics, but that just leaves them to their own devices to have more conversations about the tampering stuff that we're talking about now. So it's just the law of unintended consequences has taken full hold of the college football world. And at this point, all you can do is hold on, strap in, and just be a part of the ride because we're on it.
One of the coaches even mentioned saying that the kids are just as guilty as we are being a part of the tampering. So the players are starting to get control of this as well too. Go ahead.
If I'm a head coach, I'm nudging one of the players or maybe a couple players or maybe 10 players saying, hey, you know this guy? Hey, could you send him a text message for me? It's not tampering if you don't do it right.
True.
So you get somebody else to
dog eat dog world out there.
There you go.
Well, look, the other part of this, and I'll throw this out there, is, look, Florida State was heavy. We had too many scholarship players at the end of January, middle of February. It wasn't that long ago that FSU had too many scholarship players, and they still wanted to make some moves in the transfer portal, which just kind of opened and closed up. How do you think we had the ability to do that? I wouldn't doubt it. And I'll look, this may sound like a conspiracy theory, but I wouldn't doubt if you have coaches that contact other coaches saying, let's maybe see if they are a better fit for you and not so much here, because we need to process some guys out. And what could be a second or third string guy on FSU's roster could walk his ass down to Colorado and be a starter tomorrow. I'm not saying that's what happened. It just seems awful damn convenient that all these kids
It
who
seems
weren't
all
going to be
5 of these
starters
guys committed to Colorado within 24 hours.
They all go to Colorado, but they were all friends. They all talked. They had all gone to high school together. And then it's
Steve's
like
taking shots here, boys. Buckle up, Steve.
No, it's fun, but I mean, look at it both ways. Sometimes you want to process some guys off your roster, and it's not as if these coaches can't talk to.
Sure. No, I think. Look, hopefully, I mean,
I know a lot of Dan Mullen kids went to Nebraska.
Damn, boys,
yeah.
You guys are gonna get us in trouble here.
Just saying.
Look, it's dirty. It's a dirty game. The last thing I want to say about it is I think other sports are honestly worse. Doing it worse. And what I mean by that is if you look at LSU, like women's basketball, like they're out there recruiting. But they're putting a dream team together. We don't care as much because the emphasis on other sports outside of football isn't as looked at. So like it could happen. Everyone's like, okay, basketball, ton of people are moving around in basketball like it's going crazy. Florida's done a great job in basketball. So these other sports that aren't, is just highly talked about or kind of just moving through the wind, doing whatever, taking full advantage of it. It seems like I could be wrong here again, because I'm just looking at it from an outside, but like thinking about it now, it's like, dang, they're out there working it hard. We're just not talking about it as much because it's college football obviously reigns supreme over those other sports.
It seems like to me that the portal is more popular in basketball than it is football.
Yeah, because so college basketball recruiting is a little different. I think it's just it's not as watched, but the whole basketball landscape is a lot different. I could go down a rabbit hole with how that is. I just think it's too much. I can't even get into it. But yeah, it seems to be a lot harder.
The college lifespan of a basketball player is much shorter, so they are more likely.
Well, you can also be really, really good. You can be really, really good at basketball and be at a really, really small school. There's just so much. It's hard to really go after and recruit. I mean, most schools are basketball schools, but not football schools. You know what I mean? So almost every school has a basketball school. It's easy to have a gym. It's not easy to have a football team. So there's a lot of talent that's just floating around in basketball. So they may have been a 2-star coming out, but they see them play now or they made the tournament. It's like, that guy's a dog. And March Madness allows for these lower-end schools to showcase their talent. And so, other Virgo schools that see this talent, it's like, I want that kid. I can do a lot with that kid. And it's free recruiting for them at this point now. Football doesn't have that.